one of my favorite stories behind it. Here we have the, this building was first owned and operated by a fellow named Samuel Insull. Samuel Insull bought this building to honor his wife. You see, his wife was an opera singer in New York City. The only thing is, she was a terrible opera singer, and they kicked her out of the opera building in New York. So he built this, not just to honor her, but to spite New York City. Take a look at this building. You might notice that it's shaped just like a throne that is facing west. Also, it's been told that every single seat in that building is facing west. Therefore, if you're ever sitting down there, your back is facing east, sort of like you're turning your back on New York City. Now, that is a rumor has it story. We do not know if that story is true or not. I choose to believe it, though, because that is a level of pettiness and hating that I only wish to achieve one day. Also, like that season of Curb Your Enthusiasm where Larry opened his Spike coffee shop. Well, we have a Spike opera building here in Chicago. That's Seinfeld/Curb reference number 4. Now, one thing I know that's 100% true about Chicago is that you cannot compare Chicago to any other city. A great nickname for Chicago actually is the second city. Now, the reason why we're known as the second city is not because we're second to places like New York or Los Angeles or Kalamazoo, Michigan. No, the reason why we're known as the second city is because we are literally the second city of Chicago. You see, after the Great Chicago Fire of 1871, the whole city burnt down. We had no, the city burnt down all of downtown, all of the buildings that gave us our personality were burnt down, and we came together and we literally rebuilt the city a second time. So we're literally the second city of Chicago. Speaking of the Great Chicago Fire, does anybody know what caused the Great Chicago Fire? A cow. That is what everybody thinks. That is not true. To quote my grandfather, that is anti-Irish propaganda blaming Mrs. O'Leary's cow. The actual cause of the Great Chicago Fire is still a mystery today. One thing that, now we know many of the factors to the fire. We know one, it was a very dry summer. From June to October of 1871, it only rained about 2 to 3 inches. And B, all the buildings in the city at that time were made out of wood. So we had all these wooden, very dry buildings. There's also a very windy couple of days. So that helped spread the fire. Now, the most logical explanation is actually weather records that recorded a meteor shower above the city. So some of the debris from the meteor showers hit one of the buildings, causing it to light on fire, causing the whole city to burn down. We do not know if that's true, though. My own personal theory is that back in 1871, some kids were just playing with fire because that was every kid's favorite toy back then, because nobody had Fortnite or Nintendo Switch back then. But my favorite conspiracy that I have ever heard comes from an old coworker of mine. His conspiracy is that Mrs. O'Leary's son was a degenerate gambler, and then he owned the wrong people, the wrong amount of money, and then next thing he knows, Ralph Cifaretto shows up to his mother's barn and lights it on fire. That is Sopranos reference, number 1 as well on the tour. But one thing I do know is that we sure have bounced back from that Great Chicago Fire over 175 years later. Look at this beautiful city, what we have become. We are still continuing to grow our city, especially on our right. Here we have the Chicago Riverwalk. The Chicago Riverwalk opened up in 2010 and is now home to some of the best restaurants, cafes, coffee shops, bistros, just anything. You can just places to hang out. One of the best places to spend a romantic evening in Chicago is on the Chicago River. Now, if you were to go back in time, about like 25, 30, 40 years ago, and you were to tell people like, oh yeah, I got a really romantic evening planned for Chicago right now. I'm gonna get a nice dinner, maybe some nice drinks, and it's all gonna be beautifully on the Chicago River downtown. People would look at you like you were an insane person, because this water was absolutely polluted. It smelled bad. This was not the kind of place you'd want to hang out at. But then around the turn of the millennium, that is when we started to depollute the water in Chicago, on the Chicago River. And then in 2010 is when they finally opened up the Chicago Riverwalk. Man, they are having. I think I would like to be on that party. I don't know. I think I'd rather be. I think I'd rather be under the Dave Matthews tour bus than on that boat right there. Yeah, I actually read somewhere that the water in the main branch of the Chicago River has been so depolluted that they're going to start to let people free swim in the main branch of the Chicago River. Now, I am not the kind of guy that to quote unquote do my own research, but I am doing my own research on that one, and I am going to say no, I'm going to pass on that one. I sometimes jump in the lake when it's super hot out. If not, I have a friend with an above ground pool. That's all I need. I do not need to swim in the Chicago River.
Is that a model?
Now once again, we can see the Marina City Tower back in 2015. One of the coolest things I've ever seen was a guy named Nick Wallenda did a high wire walk where he walked from one of the Marina City Towers all the way across the street, the building right at State and right at the corner of State and Wacker Drive right there, and all the way back to the other Marina City Tower, and did that all while completely blindfolded. Yeah, I'd rather do that than pay Uber search prices, I guess. Ahead of us on our right there, we have that green building with the gold roof on it. That is the Carbide and Carbon building. It's been told that that building was built. It was designed to be a protest on the prohibition of alcohol. As the architect designed that building to resemble a bottle of champagne. Now that is once again a rumor has its story, but one thing I do know is that that is one of the most beautiful buildings to look at. So yeah, there we have the Carbide and Carbon building. One of those beautiful buildings to look at, especially as the sun is setting. You see it, the sun just glaring off that beautiful 24-karat gold paint down there. That was one of the biggest eyesores in Chicago for many years. They didn't really do much upkeep with it, but then in 2000, the Hard Rock Hotel bought that building and spent just $1 million repainting the outside of the building with a very thin layer of 24-karat gold. All right, straight ahead of us, one of the most beautiful buildings, one of the most iconic buildings in Chicago. Here we have the Wrigley Building. That is the building that was owned and operated by William Wrigley of the Wrigley Chewing Gum Company. If you take a look at the top of that building, you notice that there's a clock. This building was built in, the north building was built in 1924. South building was built in 1925. On the 13th floor, there is a bridge that is connecting the two buildings. Initially, people were scared to go on that bridge because it was built on the 13th floor, and people in the 1930s were stupid. The architect, the engineer of that bridge, actually sat on a chair for 24 straight hours just to let people know, like, dude, this bridge is safe, just go on it. And that clock tower on top, you might notice that it's not Roman numeral letters up there. Those are all W's for William Wrigley. Yeah, who said Chicagoans don't have big egos about themselves, you know? And then across the street there we have the Tribune Tower. That is the same, the Chicago Tribune newspaper. You might be looking at that, now you might be looking at the Tribune Tower and thinking to yourself, my God, that is one beautiful building. Well, that building was designed in a contest called the World's Most Beautiful Building Contest. They ended up going to this neo-Gothic design of building. Now, this is no longer the headquarters of the Chicago Tribune newspaper. It is now a residential building, but there is still a Chicago Tribune staple that is open to this day as Chicago Icon. Located across the street from the Wrigley Building, from the Tribune Tower. On the bottom floor of the Wrigley Building is a place called the Billy Goat Tavern. If you guys are in the area, if you guys are shopping on the Magmire or you're staying at any of these hotels around here, I highly recommend checking out the Billy Goat Tavern. It is sort of an underground bar, so no matter what time of day it is, It feels like you're having a couple of cold ones at 2, 3 in the morning. Many of the columnists and op-ed writers of the Chicago Tribune used to drink at the Billy Goat Tavern, venting their frustrations for the political machine, the mayor, city hall, all the corruption that was going on in the city just at that time. Definitely not going on right now. Hint, hint, wink, wink. The Billy Goat Tavern is still open today. Also, if you're a fan of Saturday Night Live, some of the earliest sketches, you might know the Billy Goat Tavern from that. Cheeseburger, no Pepsi, Coke, no fries, Cheeps. The old John Belushi character was based off the Billy Goat Tavern there. If you want to walk to the Billy Goat Tavern from Navy Pier, you can do that by walking up the beautiful Chicago Riverwalk. You can take the Riverwalk, this is still the Riverwalk. It's about like a mile and a half long. You can take the Riverwalk all the way to the Michigan Avenue Bridge, walk over the Michigan Avenue Bridge, and then you'll see the Billy Goat Tavern there. I highly recommend you do that. Or you can check out this building on our left. Here we have NBC Tower. Designed in an built in 1989, a little late for Art Deco, but it is in the Art Deco style. This building is actually made to be a small-down replica of the 30 Rockefeller Plaza in New York. Now, we haven't had television shows like SNL filmed there, but we've had shows like the Steve Harvey Show for many years was filmed there. And also my favorite guilty pleasure show of all time was filmed here at NBC Tower. I don't even have to say the full name of it. All I have to say is Jerry. The Jerry Springer Show filmed there at NBC Tower. So, yeah, you can imagine what kind of creature mutants were going through that building throughout the late 90s / early 2000s. Now, when Steve Harvey was filming a show there at NBC Tower, his commute to work was not that far. If you take a look behind us, Trump Tower, that is where Steve Harvey used to live. Now, this was about 10 years ago. Me and some friends were having a night out on, or not even a night out on the town, having an afternoon out on the town. This is back when I could start drinking at noon and it wouldn't mess me up the next, 3.5 business weeks. Getting old stinks. We were just out on the town, and I swear to God, just outside of Trump Tower, I saw Steve Harvey in a car with Jerry Seinfeld. I told my friends, like, dude, guys, I just saw Steve Harvey hanging out with Jerry Seinfeld. Could you believe that? They were like, all right, Bob, enough with the booze today. You gotta drink some water. You're seeing stuff. I was like, no, I swear to God. And then a few weeks later, I see a new season of Jerry Seinfeld Show Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee was released. And we had an episode with Steve Harvey where they left their car outside of Trump Tower. So turns out I was right. They were acting like I saw Bigfoot or something. My friends are morons. That's why they're my friends. We've had many famous people live there at Trump Tower, like Derrick Rose of the Chicago Bulls, one of the greatest hometown heroes Chicago has seen, and Patrick Kane of the Chicago Blackhawks, the greatest American-born hockey player of all time. Now, I know I was talking to you guys earlier about the Chicago River, how we reversed the flow of the Chicago River, and that caused for many floods to happen throughout the city. Well, when all those floods would happen, one thing that Chicago did, we actually raised the city. Take a look ahead of us. We have Upper and Lower Lakeshore Drive. Behind us, you might have noticed Michigan Avenue. That is Upper and Lower Michigan Avenue. We even have a triple-decker street right here. This is Wacker Drive. Now that middle street right there, that's Lower Wacker Drive. Now above Lower Wacker Drive is Upper Wacker Drive. Below Lower Wacker Drive is Lower Wacker Drive. Capiche? Y'all get that? There's Lower Wacker Drive. Above Lower Wacker Drive is Upper Wacker Drive. Below Lower Wacker Drive is Lower Wacker Drive. So, pop quiz time, what's above Lower Wacker Drive? Upper Wacker Drive. What's below Lower Wacker Drive? Lower Wacker Drive. What's below Lower Wacker Drive? Hades. No, I don't know. I have no idea what's below there. I try to avoid Wacker Drive. Upper Wacker Drive, there's a beautiful way to see the city of Chicago. It basically hugs the Chicago River, so you can see all the awesome buildings I was talking about earlier today. Lower Wacker Drive. If you're going to go on Lower Wacker Drive, make sure you are an expert of Chicago driving. I know many people that have been driving in the city for 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, touchdown, years, that still can't navigate their way around Lower Wacker Drive. If you're new here and you try to go on your GPS system on Lower Wacker Drive, you're basically going to short circuit and send you to Timbuktu. You don't want to do that. And then Lower Wacker Drive, I hope you never have to go on there because that is essentially used for a car impound lot. So You leave your car parked on, Milwaukee Avenue and Wicklow Park a little bit too long, having a couple of too many pops over at the, Double Door Tavern, then you might be out of luck. Although the Double Door has not been open for about 10 years. We have any opens. All right, we are just going to, so we're going to be heading back to the Chicago Harbor Lot. Now, we really did get blessed with a beautiful day here on the boats. I haven't seen much rain this week, which, that means in like 2 days it's going to rain like a monsoon or whatever. If it does rain here in Chicago, there are plenty of wonderful things to do, despite the fact that it's raining. Or even if you get another heat wave and you want to stay cool inside, Chicago is home to some of the best museums in the world. Just about, not too far, we're just, about like 2.5 blocks south of here. Maybe a little more than that. 4 blocks, 7 miles south of here, we have the Art Institute of Chicago. Anybody here been to the Art Institute yet? It is wonderful. You can see some of those beautiful historic pieces of artwork. There's always traveling exhibits there. If you're into more modern art, just a little north of here, right near the John Hancock Center, we have the Museum of Contemporary Art. And the Museum of Contemporary Art sometimes have art exhibits from some of the coolest, brightest young artists in the country. Other times it has art exhibits done by people who have very rich and powerful parents, because I don't get that artwork some of the time. And of course, there's a trifecta of the museums down to the museum campus. Museum campus home to 3 different museums. We have the Adler Planetarium, the Field Museum, the John G. Shedd Aquarium. Anybody go down to the museum campus yet? Even if it's a beautiful day like today, the museum campus is home to the greatest view of Chicago's skyline. Very beautiful. You see Lake Michigan, the beautiful, sort of natural beauty of Lake Michigan, juxtaposed with the man-made beauty of the skyline of Chicago. If it's super hot out too, just know that all 3 of those museums, besides being some of the most historic and coolest and biggest museums in the city, all 3 of those museums also have the best air conditioning system in the entire city. So we're just going to be sitting here a little bit longer. Anybody here going to check out like a baseball game? I believe the White Sox are in town right now. Still, the Cubs are out of town. And usually when the Cubs are out of town, that means the White Sox are in town. If you guys do go to a White Sox game, I definitely recommend checking it out. Minor league baseball is still fun to watch. The White Sox, of course, they play down at, I still call it Comiskey Park just because, like I said, I'm a stubborn Chicagoan. It's had many different names over the past couple of years. And from 1901 up until 2003, it was known as Comiskey Park. Then in 2003, they renamed it U.S. Cellular Field. And in 2017, they renamed it Guaranteed Rate Field. And then in 2024, just this past year, they renamed it just Rate Field. I read somewhere that the Chicago White Sox Stadium has gone through more name changes than they have hosted playoff games. Not a good look for them. For those of you who don't know, by the way, Guaranteed Rate or Rate Field, that is named after an insurance company, a brokerage company based out of Chicago. Now, if you've never lived in Chicago, you probably have never heard of Guaranteed Rate. Just like if you've never lived in Chicago, you probably have never heard of a Chicago White Sox fan. But trust me, they exist by the dozen. I'm friends with all 15 of them. They're great people. I'm joking. I am a Cubs fan. That's how I reside. I'm not going to fake it. There's no animosity. By the way, if you want to know, there's absolutely no animosity. Well, there's a little bit, but it's a friendly rivalry between our 2 baseball teams. It's the summertime, right? It's going on now. Baseball is the big sport. There is really no hatred